An affluent man deeply loves his servant, treating him almost entirely like a son. Yet, within a matter of months, that exact affection becomes the reason the young man dies of a fatal fever in a soot-stained industrial slum. To understand how this happens, we look inside the grand estates of colonial-era Bengal. These were environments of immense concentrated wealth and absolute social power. The master of the house ruled over an isolated, strictly layered hierarchy where every person knew exactly where they stood. Then an 18-year-old boy named Haricharan arrived to work. He was quick, highly intelligent, and entirely refused to play by those rules. He had zero interest in being subservient. Despite this, or perhaps because of it, the master grew incredibly attached to him. Haricharan quickly became the most trusted person in the household. He held the keys to the master's money, managed his personal belongings, and stayed awake through the night to care for him when he fell ill. They routinely crossed the deepest personal boundaries of their era. In a modern context, this is a heartwarming story of an employer valuing a great worker. But in a fiercely rigid class system, this intense personal bond violated the unspoken laws of the house. The master's open affection turned a young, marginalized worker into a massive target. The rest of the household, especially the master's wife and the senior staff, began to simmer with resentment. Watching a lower-class boy ignore social boundaries while holding the keys to the family wealth bred a deep, quiet hostility. They were waiting for a reason to tear him down. But Haricharan was protected by the psychological armor of Atmasaman, a fierce, uncompromising sense of self-respect. Haricharan refused to absorb the daily indignities expected of his class. If a senior staff member, or even the master, spoke sharply to him, he wouldn't look at the floor. He would instantly demand his wages and threaten to walk out the door. When an entire social system relies on a group of people accepting their inferiority, a single person defending their dignity is a problem. The household viewed Haricharan's self-respect as an intolerable threat that had to be neutralized. The opportunity finally presented itself on a quiet afternoon. The master's wife opened her cabinet and realized a piece of her expensive gold jewelry was missing. A frantic search of the entire estate yielded absolutely nothing. Logic would dictate a careful investigation, but class prejudice works much faster. Because Haricharan held the keys and lacked the social standing to fight back, the household instantly decided he was the thief. The master summoned him to the room. Instead of the typical panic or begging expected of an accused servant, Haricharan walked into the center of the accusation with an eerie, total calmness. He didn't offer a polite defense. He dragged his own small wooden trunk into the room and violently smashed it open on the floor. His few meager clothes and cups spilled out as he demanded they search his belongings. To Haricharan, the theft was irrelevant. The true violation was the assault on his Atma Saman, and destroying his own belongings was the only way to prove his spirit remained unbroken, even if his life was being dismantled. The destruction of the box only enraged the wife further. As she screamed vicious insults at him, Haricharan stopped defending himself. He simply turned and stared directly into the eyes of the master, waiting for his surrogate father figure to say 3 words, "I believe you." But the master froze. Caught between his affection for the boy and the collective vocal condemnation of his wife and senior staff, he chose absolute silence. He let the moment pass without saying a single word in the boy's defense. That silence broke Haricharan's spirit entirely. He didn't argue. He wiped his eyes, turned around, and walked out of the estate with only the clothes on his back. Exactly 4 days later, the master's wife opened the very bottom drawer of her cabinet and found the missing gold shining in the dark. She had simply misplaced it. There was no thief. The false accusations from his enemies certainly hurt Haricharan, but it was the cowardly, passive silence of his only ally that actually destroyed his life. Overwhelmed by guilt, the master immediately sent search parties to Haricharan's home village, fully intending to bring him back and apologize. But weeks turned into months, and the boy remained completely vanished. Eventually, word arrived. Haricharan had been spotted miles away, taking grueling manual labor in a brutal jute mill. the master rushed to the facility. Stepping onto the grounds, the sheer oppressive scale of the industrial squalor became immediately apparent. Haricharan had traded a life of domestic care and trust for hazardous, back-breaking labor, joining exhausted crowds hauling massive loads in a dust-choked factory. Social exile carries a physical toll. When the vulnerable are stripped of their reputation, they lose the protection of safe homes, leaving them no choice but to seek survival in the most hazardous and exploitative corners of the economy. The master finally found him shivering in a dark, dilapidated hut. The vibrant, stubborn 18-year-old was unrecognizable. His skin was burned from coal dust, his frame was emaciated, and he was shaking violently from a fatal fever. Kneeling beside the cot, the master completely broke down. He grabbed the young man, frantically confessing that they found the gold, telling him he knew he was innocent all along, and begging him to come back home. Haricharan didn't yell, and he didn't show any of his old anger. He gently held the master's hand and told him that knowing he finally believed him was the only thing he ever needed. He passed away in that dark room later that night. Systemic prejudice and jealousy easily build the trap. But it is the fetal silence of good people that ultimately springs it, a failure that carries an irreversible human cost.